Welcome, everyone watching. Uh, I'm Alec.
I'm Josh.
This is Rubber Duck Outdoors, episode 3 of our Fire Series, Part 1.
Episode 3 of the podcast,
Yes,
part 1 of the Fire series.
thank you. I said it. You just made it make sense. So,
I did. That's what I'm here for.
thanks, bud.
Yeah, no problem, boo. Yeah.
So I guess a good thing to start off with would be, you know, when do you need a fire versus, not needing one?
hmm
Um, really cold conditions. It's raining. Good times to have a fire. It's summer. Probably not.
At least not in the middle of the day. Depending on your location, it can get pretty cold at
I
night,
yeah, I guess. Like if you're in the desert.
and especially if you don't have anything covering you up. I know sleeping out here in the northern Midwest, where we're located at, it can get a little bit less than comfortable when you're just sleeping on the ground with nothing covering you up overnight. Um,
Yeah.
the other thing that gets overlooked a lot is or maybe not even overlooked, but just not considered before you head out, is the legality portion of everything. Like if you're going into a state park or a national park or a state forest or something where it clearly says no campfires outside of fire rings, that's where things get a little bit spotty. And by spotty, I mean if you're in an actual life threatening situation where you don't know where you are, it's already dark out, you're in an unfamiliar area, and you have no clue which direction you came from or where you need to go to get back to your vehicle, and you need that fire, then you need it, and that's just the way it is. Obviously, they're not allowed in the park. So, by you having a fire in said park, will bring people to you a lot faster than if you don't have the fire.
Yep.
But with that is also, it's still against the law. It's still against the regulations of these government establishments. But the way that I've heard it best described, and it's a saying that a lot of people say over a bunch of different circumstances, is it's better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. Where in some circumstances, if you don't have that fire going, you're probably going to end up dead. Whereas if you did have the fire going, you may be facing jail time, you may be facing fines or repercussions of whatever the size is for wherever you may have been. But you're still alive at that moment. And those 12 people that are judging you, it's all off of how they perceive the idea of whatever you just went through. So it is a very likely scenario that you could get by with a fine, but not actually have to go to prison or anything. Again, don't do this stuff for practice. I'm saying strictly because you got lost, you're starting to freeze, you got wet, and it's 25 degrees outside. You're about to die unless you have this fire. If it doesn't fit into those circumstances, don't start the thing.
Okay, that was a fun little rabbit hole there, bud. Um,
yeah. Got a little
huh,
fired up on that
yeah.
one.
Aha, fire pun. Um,
Ah,
uh, let's just put it this way, folks. If you're going out to just practice, bushcraft survival skills, be thinking about where you are and what some of the rules and regulations of that area are. If it is a fire ban or it says, hey, can't have fires here unless in designated areas, Just try and follow those. If you happen to find yourself in a scenario where you are like, crap, I need a fire to, get out of it, do it. We don't want you to be like scared of the repercussions and then just not doing something that could help you in that situation. Just be mindful that, hey, don't be surprised if all of a sudden you're getting a fine because you had fire in a national park during a fire ban.
Hmm.
So, yeah, pick those things up. Don't not have the fire because you're scared of what could happen. But also don't just go start burning crap in the woods
Right.
for no
Yeah.
reason. Like, use some common sense. The
Hmm.
least common thing nowadays, sadly.
It is.
Okay, on that note, I think it's a good segue to talk about survival fires we were just talking about versus just ordinary campfires.
Hmm.
Um, I know you went a little in depth with the whole survival fire of it's got a purpose, a use, and a function to. I think that's pretty much all the same word and just different ways of saying it. It keeps you warm for longer periods of time and can also serve other functions.
Hmm.
We'll touch those in part two. So keep an eye open for that. Versus a campfire where it's just kind of a talking point. It's like that thing you got on the coffee table that when everyone first came over, like, hey, what's that?
Hmm.
Same thing with a campfire or for
Uh,
cooking things and sometimes bug repellent, but we kind of covered that in the previous episode.
Mostly, it's
Yeah,
just a place to socialize.
thank you. Those were the words I was looking for.
I gotcha.
Yes, it's that. And sometimes slightly stay warm.
Right. And once you actually get stuck in that situation when it is really cold out and it's night and you're relying on that thing to stay warm, you're not going to realize that that regular campfire just isn't going to do the trick.
Oh, yeah, because if you're relying on a campfire fire instead of a survival fire, you're going to be feeding that thing every 15 minutes.
Hmm.
You want nice big chunks of hardwood to just toss on there and burn as long as you can.
Hmm.
Because then you can
That
get
way,
even more wood.
right. And that way you're only waking up 4 or 5 times a night to stoke the fire as opposed to
Staying up all night.
every 15 minutes
Yep.
throwing in another wrist thick log in the fire. Like,
Yep.
yeah.
It's like, wow, this sucks. I'm cold within 20 minutes.
Yep.
Woo.
Right when you're about to doze off, you just, oh God.
I'm freezing.
Yep.
And then you look and it's just a bed of coals. It's like, ah, man.
Yeah.
Now you're
Yeah.
stumbling through the woods in the dark looking for more firewood because you ran out half an
Hmm.
hour ago.
That's another thing to keep in mind too is make sure that you got that pile really, really big.
Yep. Like, go for, like, as tall as you and almost as long as you.
Yeah.
That's because most people are like, I'm just going to chuck firewood on it. I mean, I know I did that. I'm like,
Hmm.
just toss it on. Have the biggest blaze possible during the night. And then you realize, oh crap, it all burned away and now I'm cold within 10 minutes.
I
And I used
mean,
half the pile.
it feels really good for the first hour and a half
Yeah.
at most, but after that, it kind of sucks. It's
Yep. So
not good.
be cognizant of the type of wood, how big it is, and how much you got.
Hmm.
Um, that will go a long way in keeping you warm for a long time and able to actually get sleep. That's the
Right.
biggest, that's one of the bigger things. If you're sleep deprived, you're not worth a bag of potatoes. So
Right. Worst case scenario, you're gonna have leftover firewood for the morning,
Whoa, big whoop. Now you can.
and you can get this. This doesn't happen very often unless you do the fire thing right. You can sleep in.
Yes.
You can sleep in.
But I mean, granted, depending on the situation, all you're going to be really doing is sleeping.
That's true. At
If you
least you'll
just.
be comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've gone down this rabbit hole long enough. On to fire kits. Uh, so what are they, Josh? What are fire kits?
Fire kits, obviously it's a kit that you're gonna have a bunch of stuff in to make a fire. I got one right
What?
here. Yep. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? The thing
I
is,
never knew.
the reason the reason that carrying these is important, especially for, well, I think especially for people that have quite a bit of experience in the outdoors, to carry one of these, and for newer people starting this whole wilderness endeavor that we get into,
Mm-hmm.
you the beginners romanticize friction fire,
Way too much.
and the advanced people have done friction fire enough where they believe they can do it whenever the hell they need to. And I think being very advanced and very new are two dangerous places to be, where you might not be carrying this because you watch 5 videos on YouTube and you think you know how to make one of these kits, or you've been making these kits for so long that you know what goes into making them, but the one time that it doesn't work
You're
is when
screwed.
you're deep, deep trouble.
Yep. SOL.
So, and those are still great skills to practice. Keep going at it if you're doing it already. If you're not doing it, get into it, because it is a lot of fun to do and it's a
It
good
is.
little cardio workout. But don't be fooled into thinking that that's always going to work, because that's not how life works.
Remember
One,
our previous episode, the very first one, what if game?
yep.
Backups to your backups.
Mm-hmm. This is your life insurance policy, is carrying
Yep.
some stuff you've already practiced with that you know you can get a fire going with. Where in that instance where you can't get your bow drill to work, or you can't get your hand drill to work, or you can't get your flint and steel kit to work, you know that these things will work.
Mm-hmm.
So just for a quick example, first of all, with the container, I got in a metal tin with a hole punch in the top. That way I can make char cloth, which is a thing we'll talk about on Friday
Yes,
in,
this coming Friday.
in part 2 of this whole topic.
Part 2.
And then along with that, I got a spare lighter in it, and I got the orange one, so if I do drop it for some reason, I got a better chance of finding it other than a brown one or a black one.
Or a red one. Or a green one.
Mm-hmm. Or a blue one.
Or a blue one.
Mm-hmm. I
Hey,
got a
what other color besides orange is really easy to see and pops out?
Yeller.
There it
I got
is.
my yellow one. This is the one I carry in my pocket all the time. This
And
is the
I've
main
used it. It works.
It does. It's great.
And that thing of tape on it, it's handy. It has a nice feel to it.
It does. And we'll also get into use of this stuff in the next episode as well, in
Yes.
part 2 of Fire. So stand by. I also have some fat wood, or
But Josh, that looks really skinny.
I mean it'll be good. The trick is this. I'll go into more detail in part 2.
Ah,
Yep. So you're gonna have to stand by to figure out why I'm carrying 2 tiny little pieces of wood in this tiny little box.
and why it's called fatwood. And
And
if
why
any
it's
of you
called.
viewers know, let us know in the comments.
Mm-hmm. And then after that, I just have a bunch of pine resin.
That stuff, I I,
I
I
like
swear by it. You
I mean,
if
you
you
get
have just one match that thankfully lights, and you get it on that stuff, you got a fire, no problem, unless it's like a
yeah.
downpour
I mean, this thing will burn for a long time.
and hot.
Yeah. I mean, even these little guys that you don't think will do too
Oh
much
no,
will
they do. They
do
add up
quite
real
a bit.
quick.
Quite a bit. And then I have some other miscellaneous tinder and another item that we'll be touching later on in this episode.
I can't see that. I don't know what you're holding.
Good. You'll find out later in this episode as well.
Well, maybe if you had a better webcam, I could actually see what you're doing. But
It's the square. You can see the square, yes?
it looks like a piece of bark.
Well, that's because it's a piece of leather and it's sitting on top of char cloth.
Oh, okay.
So it's black and brown.
Well, I mean, we might as well dive into our next topic of new ways to start a fire versus old.
Mm-hmm.
I guess not necessarily versus, because we're not really comparing them. We're just kind of showcasing the different ways that we've either personally experienced or have come across on how to start a fire.
And some of them have just happened to be hundreds or thousands of years old,
Yeah,
and others are newer developments.
yeah, yeah, pretty new.
Or newer developments based off of 1,000-year
Older
old technology.
techniques, yes.
Yeah,
So, first off, we have matches.
matches.
You don't have your matches again, do
I,
you?
I think I think there's I have them right here. I have them
Okay,
right,
okay, fine, fine.
see,
Yep, I see it now.
but I think people either really like matches or they really hate matches.
Yeah,
I feel, but I mean that's all the personal experience thing, or
and
maybe.
personally, I hated matches for
Mhm.
the longest time. I would have nothing to do with them. Now, I'll take them. I mean, they're not my favorite form of starting, but
Mhm.
I mean, I always carry a few of them on me, always. So
Sure, sure, yeah. I mean they're nice to have
they are.
around. A few different matches. Two of them are actually the same, so we're kind of showcasing the containers for these ones. But these are lifeboat matches. These funky, wonky looking things. They burn about 15 seconds from ignition to when it gets down to the bottom of the match. And in that 15 seconds, they're very, very difficult to blow out.
Huh.
I've dunked them in water before and pulled them out and struck them, and they work just fine. I dunked the match and the striker in the water, and all I had to do was just kind of brush off the striker, and they lit up perfectly. This is the waterproof case that you can get along with these matches if you want to. And they do have a little section where you can change out your strikers as they get worn through. This one's getting a little rough
Just a
around.
little.
Yeah. But these strikers do float, and they got one hell of an O-ring. I mean, it's a pretty fat piece of rubber on there.
That it is.
And they just float around. I have completely submerged this for a little while. No water got into it. So if you wanted to carry just normal matches that aren't quite as big as this, you might be able to save a little space, maybe throw in some tinder in here as well.
There you go.
You still got this watertight container that'll do you just fine. And then we have a little bit more old school. Not really old school, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, a
This
little
case
bit.
is a reproduction model of like the old marbles match safes. and they're primarily used for strike anywhere matches, which are the ones you'll find with like a little white tip on the end. They'll strike on almost anything, depending on the quality that you get, stuff like that. In here, I just have normal waterproof matches, and I have a striker on the inside, and they work better than I thought they would when I first started using them. The issue with this container, though, is that the jimping on this, where you would strike your strike anywhere, is kind of too severe for it. So you get a big chance of snapping your match, really.
What about on
I've,
the butt end there?
like over on here,
Yeah,
that might work. I gotta get some strike anywheres and test it out a little bit more. But and then, like we said, strike anywheres. Alec, how's your experience with those strike anywheres? Because I know you've used them more than I have.
I like them.
Yeah.
Um, I will say they can sometimes be a crapshoot with quality. I haven't necessarily dove deep in with comparing different brands of them to
Mm-hmm.
see which one's like top notch. I
Sure.
just see, hey, strike anywhere, grab. And then here and there I found that sometimes they'll light, other times they won't right away. Um, they can be a little finicky, especially with what you're striking it on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like just a really angular stone. It's not its friend,
Mm-hmm.
but you still want a little bit of that roughness to get it going. Like
Yeah.
on wood, sanded wood is not the best to strike off. You can, but you're going to be breaking quite a few match heads before
Mm-hmm.
you get there. But no, I think they're really universal. Have you by chance seen Strike Anywhere waterproof matches?
No.
Because that would be cool. Hey, match companies,
There is
get on it.
there is a way that I've heard and I've tried out before of getting just strike anywheres and then burning a candle,
Oh, then dip it in
letting the
wax.
wax build up, and then just dip it in the wax. And then when you need to use it, you just gotta peel the wax off real quick, and
That's an idea.
that that worked. But that worked on when I tried it. I was using the actual striker from the box,
Ah,
so I was also like 13 years old when I tried that one.
you really liked to play with fire when you were young, didn't you?
God, hey man, exploring the red hair thing and
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So let's move on after matches. It's kind of a similar concept of striking something, but it's with a ferro rod.
The ferro rods. I got two of them by me right now. I have another one on my car keys, but those are a little ways away from me. So the first one that I have here is by Ultimate Survival Technologies. Not a sponsor.
Huh.
Feel like we gotta say that
Yep,
stuff,
none of this stuff we are sponsors of or getting sponsored by. There we
right?
go.
This thing was kind of cool though. I picked it up. Actually, I was just buying some that wet fire stuff.
Mm,
It's little blocks of like styrofoamy feeling things, and this came in it, and I just kept it around just to put it in small little areas. But it's a very small rod with a tiny little striker that does okay. Uh, I mean, I'm trying to think of a good place to put this, and really anywhere that you got a little bit of space that you want to fill up, it'll work. The main one that
compared
I
to,
always go to, huh?
compared to,
Compared to this dude, this is a 5 or 6 inch rod. I think it's a 5 inch rod by a half-inch thick. Bear wouldn't stop scratching the door.
oh,
Yeah.
Folks, that's his dog. There's not an actual bear.
Oh, it kinda.
Well, yeah. He's more like a Tootsie Roll.
Yeah, it's a sausage.
Yeah.
But this is a 5 inch by half-inch thick rod. You can see how much it has been used.
Mm-hmm.
I think I need to start striking on this area a little bit more so it doesn't get so thin up here. But and then more duct tape wrapped around the handle.
Yep.
And then these quick release clips that I found, because I usually keep this tied off to my belt. Back to episode 1 of the What If game, I keep this looped around my belt so that if I, for some reason, need to throw my backpack because a bear's checking me out and I want to throw my backpack so it can eat the food while I get away, I still have a fire source attached to myself. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
completely separate from the necessity of fire. So that's why I got this all looped off and everything attached to my belt. That's also why it's so big. I know it's heavy. I know it takes up a bit of room, especially in your pockets where you might have a lot of other stuff. But I still want to be able to have as much possibility of getting a fire going and have a maximum amount of striking surface to get as many sparks off and into my tinder bundle as I can possibly get without having to worry about, oh, I'm going to wear my ferro rod out. Plus, if you're a fisherman, there's some weight behind this thing. So if you get a few tiny bluegill or perch or bass or something, just, it'll do the trick. It'll put them out.
Multi-use.
So there we go.
Yep.
Multi-use purpose. So a few things on ferro rods.
Yeah.
The one thing you do need to worry about, though, is if it is around salt water, they will corrode quite quickly, which at that point, you just need to dry it off in your shirt or something like that. Other than that, you can't break this thing. Good luck with
Well,
that.
if you
I mean,
spike it on the ground hard enough.
that's true, I suppose. So don't hit them on the ground and don't submerge them in salt water.
There you
And
go.
you'll be all right.
That's pretty two easy things to follow.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as fire lighting things go, these are one of the least delicate things to carry. You can
Compared
snap
to our
that.
next one,
Yep.
which is
Yeah.
friction fire. Just rubbing two sticks together.
Mm-hmm.
Try and get a little spark.
Mm-hmm. Friction fire is interesting because of how many variables there is with
Yeah.
it.
I don't know why in so much, um, you know, TV and movies and everything, the first thought is, I'm going to rub two sticks together and make a fire.
Because it's sexy.
It is, but it's so much more complicated. I think it's probably one of the more complicated fire starting methods out there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you do like the bow drill compared to just the hand drill or the, was it the fire lay or fireboard? I always
The
forget what
fire
that one's
plow.
called. Thank you, fire plow.
Yep.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, of those three, the bow drill is probably the most ridiculous and variable method out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the
Yeah.
other ones are
Sure.
strike and sparks or flame will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Not just going to town trying with that drill to get it
Right.
hot enough to maybe get an ember to then blow into your tinder. It's like, what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even though there's more success rate with the bow drill than there is with the hand drill or the fire plow,
Mm-hmm.
with the bow drill and the fire, or with the hand drill and the fire plow, movement is pretty similar. But with the hand drill, you're just doing this for a long time. And with the
Right.
fire plow, you're doing this for a long time. And sure, the water content in the wood and the humidity of the air and your tinder source all play a variable.
Mm-hmm.
But with the bow drill, first you need to get your string tension right.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to get your balance right. And then you need to figure out how much pressure on your
Spindle.
uh, on your on your
Handhold.
spindle, on your handhold you
There you go.
need, in conjunction with how fast or how slow you need to be bowing that bow back and forth, and then still needing to look over while you're doing this whole motion to see when you have a coal going on. Mechanically, it's easier, but with mechanics come along like a lot more complicated processes that your muscles need to do and your brain needs to do, other than just doing this for however long it takes or doing this for however long it takes.
Yeah.
That's why we carry fire kits. So when we're practicing this stuff,
Hey.
it doesn't work and you shred your hands apart because you're forming calluses and blisters, and then they pop and then everything's just a giant shit show. You can just pull out your Bic and light your fire.
Yep. And then you're good to go. So let's kind of move away from some of the older methods and into a more newer, okay, I guess it's an older technique just with newer advances with it. And that would be solar powered.
Solar power.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get to see what's in my little Bart
Oh, it's that.
It's that.
I'm stupid.
this
Now I
is
see it. Now I
this
understand.
is a this is a
Ah,
convex magnifying lens that I pulled out of an old broken pair of binoculars, and this one seemed just small enough, but still gave me enough power to get a solar fire going. And as
mm-hmm.
I'm saying that, realizing my light isn't in the right spot. But the general idea is I have a lamp in front of me, and we're going to use my hand as the tinder source. The lamp is going to be the sun in this quick.
I think we got that, Josh.
I said that already.
Yeah.
I didn't remember if I did or not.
Maybe you didn't. I don't know. Just
Remember.
hold it up.
Anyway, what we're focusing on is to find that white light right there that's covering up my ring. We're trying to get that as small as possible and stay in one spot for as long as we can on our tinder source, for that to significantly heat up very, very quickly to light whatever our tinder source is to flame. So if any of you guys have ever burned ants with a magnifying glass when you were a kid, this is the same exact thing, only instead of doing something as messed up as burning ants, you're just lighting
Lighting
some
a fire.
grass or
Yeah.
some birch bark or some char cloth on fire or something like that, which we'll dive into deeper on Friday.
Yep. Not the ant burning. The other stuff.
Yeah, not the ant burning thing. That's that.
Yeah. But I know. Was it you said Les Stroud did that technique on one of his episodes
Mm-hmm.
with the can, and then he polished it with like a candy wrapper.
Yeah, I believe it was in the Kalahari. He had an empty soda can and he had like a Hershey's bar or something like that. And he took the chocolate, and there's something with the wax and chocolate that'll polish metal. And he polished the concave part of the can, and then held that near his tinder source towards the sun, and the sunlight came in this way, curved around that concave area, and went back into his tinder, and eventually it heated up enough where it burst into flame.
But also remember, you're gonna have a hot can from that too, so
Mm-hmm. Right,
be wary of that.
right. More primitively on this technique, the Inuit could take pieces of ice that they would slowly shape and polish away until it was smooth, just like a magnifying glass. And it would basically do the same thing a magnifying glass does, and they would use that in the same exact way.
You
The
good, bud?
dog still fucking,
Oh, the dog.
yeah, he's annoying the shit out of me over here.
And another newer method, I suppose, is lighters. We
Mhm.
got Bix, got regular like grill lighters, really long ones. Uh, what?
Zippos.
Zippos, thank you. Torches, all different kinds.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, Bix, they are the most sturdy. They last a long time. There we go. Um, Zippos are nice and all when they're all fueled up, have an extra flint and everything, and are good to go. Otherwise, they're kind of a pain because you have to upkeep them a bit more compared to a Bic. You just flick, good to go.
Yep.
Um, barbecue lighters, they're nice, but I feel like you go through fuel so much longer
Mm-hmm.
than with some of the other ones just because of how big the flame is.
Right.
And I mean Bics, you can get a pack of them. You can also go the cheaper route and get the pack of like the super thin plastic ones that you can like hit with a baseball bat, explode. But probably wouldn't trust those. What I think like a 10 pack for like $5 or less or something.
Yeah.
It yeah, ridiculously cheap lighters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, wouldn't advise those. Just stick with the Bic. They're
Stick with the Bic.
yep. Again, not a sponsor. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but no, they're just good all around lighters. And that kind of segues into rope lighters. Same idea, where you got like the lighter part essentially with the there we go. Gonna point to where the flint is. So you got that.
Flint
And
wheel.
yep,
The pump
so it
that
can
makes the
spark.
spark.
And then where the fuel and gas would come up from, instead would be a piece of rope. So it's
So
spark on it.
I got a piece of lamp wick. So it would be like
Yeah,
that,
essentially. Different housing design, and then spark onto that end.
sort of.
You get embers, because it essentially would make char cloth. How's that working, bud?
It's not.
Oh, well,
I
I
got it
mean,
light with my ferro rod, but I don't
yeah,
think the sparks off of this are quite hot enough to
yeah.
get it
But
going.
that's the essential idea of a rope lighter. You get that hot, it creates an ember on it, kind of like char cloth. You can then put tinder on it, get it going. When you're done, cap it off, pull it down depending on the design, and then
Mhm.
it extinguishes it, and you're good to go.
I would like to get one of those and try that out.
Yeah, they're fun.
I'm sure. So they can't be too hard to make either.
No, I don't believe so. Granted, I've never made one, but
Yeah. The idea sounds simple. So
what? You get another email?
I did. LL Beans let me know there's a sale on outerwear.
Oh, again, not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. There's
Oh,
gonna be a lot of those.
yep. So then I think you know a little bit more with this newer one. The whole steel wool and a battery.
The steel wool and a battery. I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like, other than you 9 volts work better
Yep.
because if this is our battery, the positive and negative ends of the battery are both on the same side. And then you get your random clump of steel wool, and I believe it needs to be triple aught or quadruple aught steel wool. So it needs to be very, very fine
Mm-hmm.
steel wool. And you just put that ball of steel wool onto the negative and positive ends. And then the steel wool just starts burning. And by burning, I don't mean there's flame or anything like that, but basically it turns into molten steel. So it'll slowly start to burn away. It'll basically be an ember made of steel. And you take that ball of steel wool to your tinder source, blow it to flame if you even need to.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you'll just touch that steel wool to your tinder and it'll go up. And then build your fire like you normally would if you're going off of some sort of tinder source.
Yeah. And with that, it gets what like a red hot, kind of like a filament in a light bulb.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it. You're
Yeah.
basically holding a ball of a bunch of filaments in your hand,
All going off at once.
all going off at once, and it is very hot,
Yeah.
and it works really really well. Of course, how often you're going to be out in the woods carrying a 9-volt battery and a wad of steel wool in your bag? Who knows?
Unless you pack it. I mean,
Unless you pack it. But it is an unconventional way that if you happen to find a battery and steel wool, you can put that to the test. Or, going back to episode 1 with the world's come to an end people, there you go.
yep.
So, and if you need to test a battery because a piece of equipment takes a 9-volt, you don't know if it's good or not. Instead of putting it to your tongue, you can just burn a little bit
Like
of
a
steel wool if you want.
psychopath. Yeah.
I
That's,
actually, I actually had to test a battery in a fire detector a couple weeks ago, and that was the first thing I did
I don't understand that. I'll never do that.
because the fire alarm wasn't going off,
Should it
and
have been?
the alarm looked old as hell. So I didn't know if the battery was just dead or if something was actually wrong with the alarm. And so I tested the battery on my tongue, and it gave me a little zap. Bought a new fire detector and put the old battery in that I had licked, and it went off just fine. So it was obviously the actual detector itself that was jacked up.
If young children are watching this, we are not recommending you just touch batteries to your tongues.
That's mom and dad's job.
Yes. Well,
Have some steel wool with you so you don't.
need to do that.
To the parents, have steel wool so you don't need to lick the battery.
Yes.
I didn't have any steel wool, that's why I had to lick it.
Awesome.
Next.
Next, and our final one is the fire piston.
Those things seem cool. I've never
Yes.
used one.
Neither have I.
I've seen them online a lot. But
Yes.
basically, this is like how the pistons in your engine work.
Not really, but okay.
Well, I mean, sort of, as far as like compressing air to make a ridiculous amount of heat.
But it's not.
Some engines.
It, okay, fine, whatever.
Well, I don't know. I'm not a big car guy. If any of you guys understand the differences between a piston and an engine and a fire piston, let us know, because we need to be educated
I
on.
feel like we're going to get sent to school on that one.
I hope so.
Uh,
I want to know a little bit more. But basically, fire piston is a rod, much like
Bat.
this size, and it has a housing that's just big enough for this to fit into. And I
And
believe
there's
usually there'll be,
like a gasket on the end to
yes,
like
and there
seal
will be
it.
a gasket down here, or I think the gasket's up here, and there'll be a little dimple here where you'll put a little bit of tinder, and you put it into this housing and just bang on it and pull it out really quickly, and your ember or your tinder should be burning either on the end of this or somewhere down in the housing.
Yeah.
That's what you take to your main tinder source, your big bundle of fluffy stuff, and blow it into a flame.
Yeah, what I've seen them when they've been demonstrated, I've seen them on videos and stuff. They usually have a thing of tinder in the bottom, and then they just smack it,
Okay.
compresses it so much it gets hot and ignites, and then they just dump it out, good to go.
Yeah. And there aren't too many people that still make them by hand, but I know it is a primitive skill of making these fire pistons. So
Oh, I thought that was a modern thing.
no, it's been around for a while.
Oh,
I
what's a
think
while?
I don't know, a few hundred years at least.
Hmm.
I know there was a guy down in Papua New Guinea that still knows how to make them by hand, who's part of the indigenous culture down there.
Road trip?
As long as it's a boat, not a plane, I'm good.
There. But that kind of brings us to the end of our episode, folks. We just want to say thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our others, maybe toss down a like, comment, or even subscribe. Really appreciate it.
And while
And we
you're at
want
it with that subscription portion, make sure to turn on those notifications if you really enjoyed these videos, so then you'll know the moment that we put these things up, because it seems like YouTube can get a little spotty sometimes as far as
yeah, just a little.
notifying.
Yep, and then you'll know when we do our part two of the fire episode live, coming out this Friday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you
Yeah,
want to tune in, um, hopefully everything technology wise will be working then.
yeah, fingers crossed.
Hopefully.
Can't fight technology.
Yep.
Obviously.
But on that note, I'm Alec.
I'm Josh.
And this is Rubber Duck Outdoors.